Hello everybody. My name is Marina and you are listening to the second episode with Laura Dekker on podcast Maré Sonora. If you are wondering what does Maré Sonora mean, well, you can translate that from Portuguese to English as resonant tide. So I hope it makes more sense for you now. Last week in the first episode, Laura talked about her new project. She started up a foundation called Lauradekker World Sailing Foundation. And the plan is to take kids across the Atlantic to teach them not only how to sail, but also life skills. If you didn't get the chance to hear the first episode, don't worry. It's recorded here in the podcast, so you can play it anytime, whenever you want. Today, Laura will be talking about her first trip around the world when she traveled alone on board Guppy. She was only 14 when she started the trip, and the circumnavigation was completed by the age of 16 years old. So, Laura has become the youngest person to ever solo circumnavigate the world. Laura, talking about your first trip, what can you tell us about the very happy moments and also about the difficult situations you went through?
Yeah, sure. So I think the hardest time was actually before my trip because I was stopped by the Dutch childcare. And even the government at some stage got involved, and they just said that my parents were crazy and I shouldn't do this. And so it became like a big court case, and then the media got involved. And for me, that was just, I didn't know how to deal with that. You know, I knew how to deal with storms and with calms and how to fix things on the boat, but I didn't know anything about media or dealing with lawyers and court cases. So that was really, really hard just to get through that. On the trip itself, the first step was the hardest. Like when I left Gibraltar on my own, sailing to those next islands, I was so nervous. I couldn't eat or sleep. And yet at the same time, I was super happy. And it was like this crazy jumble and mix of just all possible emotions. And then the first night I sailed through this huge fleet of fisher boats, which fishing boats, when you're on a sailboat, it's just somehow never goes together. There's like nets, and then you're sailing and you can't really maneuver, and it's the middle of the night and you don't know where they're going. So that was really nerve-wracking. But I remember, and then I came to Lanzarote and it was very foggy. It was so foggy that you could see maybe like 20 meters. And so I was looking at my chart and I had my GPS, and I was like, it should be here. It really should be here. The island should be here. And I couldn't see it. And I was like, no, I can't, it must be here. But it was such a really challenging first trip. And when I finally found the island, found it, okay, I was in the right place. I was so happy. I was like, okay, I can do this. I think for the happiest, there were just really special moments out on the ocean, like sitting on the bow with dolphins under the boat, or floating through the night when there's no wind and just having stars like reflected everywhere. And all the phosphorescences in the water. Those are like images that seem out of this universe. Like, that's just stuff that you see in movies that is suddenly real, and you sit there and you think, yeah, that's what I'm doing it for. That's why I'm here. And those are things you never forget.
And I remember watching one of your talks when you mentioned that when you were 8 or something, you had a dream and you knew you wanted to do it. What was that like? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I think I was just really focused. I was very sure about what I wanted. And it was just like, oh, that's just what I'm going to do. I was like, no question about it. At that stage, I didn't know how or when, or like, I didn't even think I was going to do it on my own. That was never really a big plan of mine. I always thought I will do it when I'm grown up. But yeah, it just slowly evolved and became what it has become, which is great. But yeah, I was always sure about it somehow. Like I just knew that that's what I needed to do.
So you have a young son now, right?
Yes.
How would you feel like in I don't know, in a few years' time, he came up to you and said, "Mom, I want to do the same like you did when you were younger"? How would you react to that?
Well, it's difficult for me to say no. But it's so hard, and I realize now more than ever how brave my parents were to let me go, because you don't want to. But at the same time, I think for me, if he would come, the most important thing would be if he is able to calculate in risks. Like if he is able to think ahead and to think about things that could go wrong and deal with them properly and not panic, then yes, I could probably feel confident, because those are the most important things. It's not even if he's a good sailor, it's just being able to deal with uncertain and strange situations. And not every child is able to do that. Like some are able to do it at a very young age, and some aren't even able to do it when they're 30. So it would be up, depending on him, totally. But I do want to give him the freedom to learn and to explore, and give him these opportunities that my parents gave me also, because that really made me the person I am today. And I think that's what parents are for. You know, you're there with your child when they are little to teach them about themselves and about the world, and to let them fall and learn while they are still in a safe environment. But what I see very often is that parents hold their kids and hold them and hold them and hold them until they're 18, and then the kids say, yeah, well, I'm going now. And then suddenly they still have to learn all of the things that their parents have always protected them from. And I think for me, that would be much worse, because then stuff is really going to go wrong. So I would rather have him fall now and make mistakes while I can pick him up and say it's okay, than throw him into the deep when he's older. But of course, it hurts. Like when he does something and I'm like, yeah, I see it, but I'm going to let you fall anyway. And then I'm like, yeah, that's painful.
You're 25 now, right?
Yeah.
When you left, you were 14. Looking back, if you were about to leave today at your age, would you do anything differently than you did when you left for your big trip, Laura?
I always find this a difficult question, because yes, of course, now I would say maybe listen to my parents a little bit better, care less about all the mean comments that people make, try to be nicer to media and not push everyone away. But at the same time, I think that was my character. That's how I felt about it. And that's also what made the trip. Like the fact that I pushed everyone away meant I was absolutely on my own. And because of that, I learned a lot. So in hindsight, all the stupid stuff I did, I learned from, and that made me the person I am today. So no, I'm pretty happy where I stand and what I've learned. So I don't think I would change anything.
So you have a tradition of naming your boats Guppy.
Yeah.
How many guppies have you had so far then?
So this will be Guppy 3.
So Laura, I know it's a bit difficult to ask, but would you like to talk a little bit about what happened to your former Guppy?
No, sure, that it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so basically what happened is I was very sure that I wanted to start this foundation and get the trust going. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to focus on that. So Guppy needs to find a new home, basically. And I didn't really want to sell her because she means a lot to me. And I was like, yeah, it needs to go to people that I would feel comfortable with. And then at some stage, I got into contact with LifeSail, which is like an organization in the States that sail with kids. And they said, oh, we would take the boat and we would use it to go sailing with kids and teach them about the environment and all these kind of things. And I thought, well, that would be great. If my boat could be used for such a cause, that would be awesome. But so we made an agreement where I lended the boat to them and I could get it back, or they could just use it for a period of time. And then they were going to sail the boat to the United States because I didn't have time to do it. So they got the boat ready and they had a captain on the boat whom you met that I actually felt comfortable with, that I thought, okay, I think he can do it. And so they sailed the boat to Fiji, and then suddenly I just got a message saying, oh, the captain has left the boat and someone else is going to jump in and sail it. And already at this point, I was feeling like that's not good. Like, this was the only person that I entrusted the boat with that I have talked to about all the systems. And suddenly he was gone. And I tried to contact him, but he didn't really tell me why he had left, like what the actual problem was, which I found strange. Like, I don't really know. Maybe they had a fight. I do know he had an injury, like he fell and he had a lot of pain on his ribs, but I don't know if that is the main reason that he left. Anyhow, somehow then I think some other people sailed the boat, but at some stage it was only one woman who was sailing the boat, which wouldn't be a problem. I mean, I was on my own too. But she was not an ocean sailor. She had never soloed a boat of that size in these oceans. And the main issue for me was that they did not communicate. They didn't answer my emails. They didn't write to me what was happening. And they had a tracker on the boat so I could see where they were. And I kept voicing my concern, saying, why are you sailing here? And why is it taking so long? Like, they were doing an average of 4 or 5 knots, where I'm like, this boat should be going a lot faster. What are you doing? To me, and pictures of where the sails were just half ripped, and I kept seeing stuff that really worried me. And so I tried to get into contact, but they didn't. They always kept saying, oh, everything is fine and we've got everything under control and everything is going perfect. And I was like, well, I don't think it is. But it didn't talk to me about that. And so eventually I saw that she was heading to a really remote atoll in the northern Cook Islands called Manihiki, and she anchored there. And at the moment she anchored there, because I was watching this tracker really closely, I wrote Matt and I said, you can't do that. She can't anchor here. It's not possible. If a squall comes, if the wind turns, she will be right on the reef. It's the ocean side of a reef. I mean, it's no sailor in its right mind would anchor there. I was like, what? I just couldn't believe it. I think you could probably anchor there in really good weather when you're with a big crew who can keep anchor watch all the time, but not when you're alone, tired. It's just so unsafe. And so I really panicked when I saw that. I wrote them and they didn't answer. And I think the next day the boat was already on the reef, but it may have been the day after that. I'm not sure. But very quickly I saw the tracker move onto the reef. And so I mailed them again saying, I see the tracker is on the reef. Is the boat on the reef? What is happening? Can I do anything? And again, they did not give me any information. They didn't tell what was going on. And so for me, this was just, that was the most frustrating thing. I had thought about the fact that something could happen to the boat, that, yeah, for whatever reason, she could sink or be lost. And I had come to terms with that. But not that someone who knew me and I thought knew what the boat meant to me would treat me in such a way. Because it was not the fact that the boat was lost, it was the fact how they treated me. That basically, it's like this boat to me felt like a child, a friend that I had been on the biggest adventure of my life. And then someone just basically kidnapped it and I didn't know anything about it anymore after that. That's just how it feels for me. It's like my child has been murdered. If they would have talked to me, if they would have told me what had happened, if they would have just communicated properly, it would have been a lot less bad. It would have still been bad because it didn't need to happen. It was out of sheer stupidity, out of unknowledgeable sailors. And that was painful to me, that this boat had brought me through so many storms and through so many hazards, and then that should be her fate. That someone who just makes a really stupid decision and then she gets on the reef. And I think specifically the first week, she would have still been salvageable because she was right on the edge of the reef, which I only know because I contacted locals on the island and asked them to send me pictures. I wrote them that if they would like bring out anchors and use winches, because they were using like boats to tow her off. But boats are not strong in the water. And so I told them other ways to do it. But they just didn't reply on it. They just didn't listen. And that was the toughest thing. That it was just, I still don't know. I still haven't heard the full story. I haven't had pictures, and like, it just hurts a lot that they would treat me like that they just sell the pieces. They took the insurance money. They sold the pieces of the boat. So, like, they wrecked a historical boat and my friend, and then took all the money from it and just vanish and pretend it never happened. I think that's just insane. Yeah. So that's basically the short of it.
You just heard the second part of the interview with Laura Dekker. If you're enjoying the show, please don't forget to subscribe and follow the podcast on the app of your choice. Thank you so much for listening, and I see you next week on Monday.